Hi, I'm Saren.
And I'm Ray.
We're your Spider Baby hosts from To Know Her Is to Fear Her, a Spider-Woman podcast, as well as proud members of the collective.
You're listening to Capes and Lunatics. Gimme, gimme.
Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend D.G. Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
This is Luca Perich, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Recording has started. In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, there may come a threat that no one hero alone can face. In those times, will rise a team of Avengers. This is Avengers Declassified. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is the blue-eyed bomber from the Burger Pits.
Phil Podcast Parrish. I was waiting for you to tell
Phil
me.
Podcast Parrish.
I was waiting for you to tell me to assemble.
Philip, assemble. Yes. I thought you came pre-assembled. I don't know. I did not know this was an IKEA podcast. Okay.
We're already here.
Yes. Anyway, tonight's episode, we are discussing the 8-issue run of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, or was it Earth's Mightiest Heroes? It's actually just called Earth's Mightiest Heroes, right?
I think it's Earth's Mightiest Heroes, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like Avengers, yeah. And this is the Earth's Mightiest Heroes from 2005.
Yes.
Because this is something we learned earlier today, that they will reutilize these titles a lot.
Yes.
And it can be a little confusing as to which book you're reading. But anyway, this is a retelling of the Avengers origins from the first issue, or to be more clear, just after the first issue,
Yes.
to the unveiling of Cap's Quirky Quartet.
Issue 16, yeah.
Or Kooky Quartet, sorry. And, you know, and again, like I always say, if you love superheroes talking to bureaucrats, this is the book for you. And I say that facetiously, but I also say that honestly, because for me, that is a very interesting aspect of these stories, is that behind-the-scenes minutia that the Avengers have to go through to actually establish themselves as Avengers.
This was the first time I read these. Like, I liked the story, but those first couple, they didn't seem like there was a lot of, well, what are you going to do about the Hulk? And hey, do you want security clearance? What are you going to do about the Hulk? You know, and then after a while, after we got past the Hulk thing, it kind of got moving, but... Yeah,
well, but you see, I liked that because it's a very realistic... It's,
oh, yeah.
You know, it's a very realistic of... This is stuff that... So, here's an example. Someone was recently making a joke about, you know, why is it every time they go where no man has gone before, there's already people there? I made the point was, no, they go to places where no one has gone before all the time. It's just a very boring trip because they just do a planetary survey, and it doesn't go on the TV show.
Yeah.
So, effectively, you know, what goes into the comic books is all this stuff that happens that's interesting. What doesn't go into the comic books is Tony Stark and Iron Man, because at this point, you know, secret identities, having to deal with a contact by the name of Merch, who I wonder if that's a guy who's been in Marvel before. Is this his first appearance? I don't know. But I like him and I want him to come back.
Yeah, because I don't think they did that back.
Henry Peter Gyrich before Henry Peter Gyrich.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that they didn't have one at that, you know, back in the original comics, and they were like, well, I'm sure there's like a starting point where they actually introduced Gyrich, so they're like, we can't have Gyrich right away, so we need to like create a guy probably that.
But this guy is great. Merch is fantastic, and Merch is basically like, dude, you are superpowered beings. Half the population is terrified of you people.
Oh, yeah.
You're lucky you're not freaking mutants. Because nobody likes them.
And you vouched for the Hulk.
And you vouched for the Hulk. And you said, the Hulk will be fine. I personally stake my reputation on it. Which is like, why would you do that when you know you even got into this group expressly because you totally thought, yeah, Hulk breaks stuff, doesn't he? He does that all the time. You know?
And it's very weird. It's like I think Merch and like even like Tony to a certain degree, they're just like, oh, this guy Thor claims he's a god, but you know, I think he's just delusional. It's like, you've seen the kind of power he packs. That doesn't worry you that if this guy is delusional, he's packing this level of power?
Well, they also might think it's sort of a put on.
Maybe, yeah.
Like he says he's Thor because that's the costume.
Yeah.
You know, that he's playing the role.
Well, Donald Blake's putting on a costume.
Well, you know, I mean, the idea is, and it's interesting because there actually is a scene in this that they used to do more. That they don't really do anymore, where Thor would call upon his medical training.
Yeah, and they walk in the hospital when he's like telling them exactly what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked that, and it is something that they don't do anymore. Because they used to do that, you know, Thor had all of Blake's memories that, you know.
I like, too, that it's like they didn't even like really call it out even, too. There was like no editor's note that said, oh, you know, Thor used to be bonded to Dr. Donald Blake. No, it was just, if you know, you know. If not, it's just like, oh, hey, I guess Thor has medical knowledge.
And at this point, he still is Donald Blake.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know, at this point, you know, and that was one of the things about, as people will tell you, is that, you know, when they first started this story, it wasn't clear, was Donald Blake taking on the mantle of Thor, or was Donald Blake Thor?
Yeah.
And they kind of went back and forth on this for a while, so if Donald Blake himself wasn't sure if he was Thor, it kind of makes sense that not everyone else is sure whether or not he's Thor either, you know, or what it means to be Thor.
Yeah, that would have been cool if they would have played that out more, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, there's only so much space, and like I said, they're telling you this story between the panels. And I do like what they wound up telling, because I really feel that it gave a good depth to this idea of founding something like the Avengers.
Yes.
You know, they refer back to the Charter several times, which is a really nice bit.
Yeah.
And just this idea that they are trying to form something new. Something that has not existed on this planet before, although actually, obviously, the Fantastic Four already exists.
Yeah, but I think it's like Fantastic Four are more like a family, and like they're more. I mean, they're supposed to be like explorers and like more on like a scientific bent. This is like the first time, I guess, in the Marvel universe. Well, is, you know, as far as they know, superheroes are coming together and to say, you know, yes, we're here to proactively protect humanity.
Yeah, and that is also, I mean, and that is what's interesting about it. And it is, you know, it's very interesting that when Justice League came out, and they say, well, why don't we do our own Justice League? They actually created the Fantastic Four first.
Yeah.
I didn't go right to an Avengers. And maybe it's because they just didn't have the backbench at that time, you know, because obviously Fantastic Four is actually the first comic book they do. So
yeah, because
they don't.
Yeah, because Fantastic Four, I think, was what, 1961. It's like the Hulk and Thor don't show up until 62. So yeah. Yeah,
so I guess that makes sense. Now that I think about it, now that I use my brain powers to think, I realize.
Yeah, once Stan had
that's why they couldn't do it. They didn't have a backbench.
Yeah, once Stan had that bench, he's like, let's go.
Yeah, although it's interesting because one could argue they could have just did a story around Captain America because he was doing comic books up until a while. And of course, they still had Human Torch and Namor. And they could have brought all those guys back.
The Defenders.
So that would be a very interesting alternate Avengers, you know.
Oh, the Invaders, yeah.
Yeah, but of course, Invaders weren't a thing until years later, too.
Yeah.
Like, they retroactively created the Invaders, but it's like, if you think about it, that could have been what Stan Lee could have created. He could have, with Jack Kirby, created this idea, well, why don't we use these Golden Age heroes that we have, just like the Justice League? And for what it's worth, that is perhaps what is most interesting about what Stan and Jack and the Bullpen did, was rather than going back to these Golden Age heroes, they said, well, let's just create new things. Let's come up with some new characters, new ideas. Let's think what we can get past the comics code. Let's think of how they get origins, and let's throw them together. And then let's figure out a bunch of other ways we can throw them together, as they did with the X-Men and other characters like that. But it's interesting in this because it is, as I said, that little internecine backbiting and the fights between everyone, and this is actually one of the most interesting Hank Pyms I've seen written recently. He's a guy with a lot of issues, and just asked if he was a good person. But he is a good person. He wants to do good, but he's also feeling very much out of his league, and feeling he needs to do more. He needs to put himself on that godlike status, and it's like, you don't need to. And you don't need to push yourself so hard. But again, it's his own monomania. It's interesting also when we get to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in this. That's an interesting aspect of this story. Is like, everyone thinks about Scarlet Witch's mental illness, but people almost never talk that much about Quicksilver's problems. Because Quicksilver has had as many, if not more, breakdowns than the Scarlet Witch,
Oh, yeah.
And if he was a Barry Allen type, making sweet, sweet love to the timeline, could be just as destructive as the Scarlet Witch has been. And it's an interesting take on it, that is something that exists that they've never really explored. Yeah,
and again, it's like, well, like they even said it, I mean, they kind of like really just like kind of glazed over it real quick when they did the original version of this story, but it's like, the whole world identifies you with like, the biggest mutant terrorist in the world, Magneto, and they're like, we really couldn't leave, he kind of threatened us, Yeah.
Although I do like that they're keeping it consistent at this point with, they didn't know he was their father and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Like, which of course gets retconned and reconned, and which again, it's an interesting aspect of the Maximoff twins, how their parentage gets changed so much.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a later issue when we get to their secret origins. When we're doing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, because we are going to be talking about a lot of Avengers-related content in this show.
Oh, yeah.
But I like the fact that they fight Kang in this, and I like the fact that they have, Rick Jones being so prominent.
Yes.
In the stories. Especially with him, like, figuring out randomly pushing buttons until he frees the Avengers, which I thought was a nice aspect of it. Probably is what was written. But it's weird because I've never read those stories like in comic book form. I've only read them as digest. And so I do appreciate how they managed in this series to keep a lot of that Silver Age wonder of those early Avengers stories and their incongruity, and still make it palatable for a modern audience that, quite frankly, just wants to hear about bureaucratic red tape that superheroes have to work through as far as, fight patterns and things like that. And I like what they did with Cap. Cap is a real breakout star in this.
Oh, yeah.
In that both he is dealing with this very heavy PTSD, he is suffering bad effects of being frozen for, at this point, 60 years?
Yeah.
And, 45 to 2005, 60 years,
And I mean, and in World War II would have been bad enough, but then everything that happened with Bucky right before he got frozen, and then you drop him decades in the future,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on the man has to adapt to, but they did a good job. They did a good job by both not shying away from his trauma, but also showing how he works through it and rises above it. And I think that is the real crux of it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when he realizes that, he's got to take on this quirky, the quirky quartet, these three arguably supervillains that he's going to turn into superheroes and Earth's mightiest heroes, and they will be for a while,
Well, that was interesting too, because Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver show up, and they're like, well, or Or was it Hawkeye first? And they were just like,
Yeah, Hawkeye's first.
Yeah, they're like, do we want it? What are we going to do? Some kind of like villain reform thing? And, and Iron Man's like, why not? And he's like, anyone can do it. Cap can do it.
Yeah. And you know what I found very interesting in this is the fact that Jarvis and Hawkeye build a relationship first, which also then restructures the whole. And it's interesting because they do that because they never really imply that Jarvis was in on the gag.
Oh yeah,
when he gets set up, but you kind of think, oh, so this was all part of the plan, and he did this. But then again, it's also like, yeah, but it was so easy to get past all your defenses. And I was like, well, did Jarvis just let him in? Or did he actually do it and then tie up Jarvis? Like, did Jarvis know what was going on in the scene?
Mm-hmm.
And, he shoots the arrows to free Jarvis, all this kind of stuff. Because, and they have this intentional antagonism, too, where he keeps on calling Jarvis Jeeves. And you can see it's not sitting well. But at the same time, when they have their tea together in the kitchen, there's almost this like little smile of recognition, but they don't spell it out for us, which I do appreciate as well. It's like this idea that you can take from this idea that Jarvis set the whole thing up so that Hawkeye could get into the Avengers, or Hawkeye just, did all this because he knew Jarvis and he probably felt, maybe he didn't tell Jarvis what he was doing because he needed that real sense of fear in Jarvis's eyes, but then Jarvis figures out, oh, I see what you did.
Yeah.
I see how you got yourself into this position. So that's neat, because again, it establishes a new possible canon without undoing the old lore. And that is interesting. Now, at the same time, they also don't have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch show up in the same storyline, which is a little annoying to me, that they do have this separate storyline for those guys. So they don't get to be part of the three of them breaking into the compound.
Oh, yeah.
And then becoming the new Avengers. Just like that, which is, it's like I said, it's a more believable storyline, but you do realize, oh, well, I guess we're kind of missing out on that, It's not quite going to be comics accurate. And as I said, one of the most uncomics accurate aspects is that they make Howard Tony's grandfather at the start of this.
Yeah.
Which I don't like. Not my Iron Man. But then again, I guess this probably predates Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, who was an older Iron Man who could have had that World War II dad.
Yeah.
So if you're still running Tony Stark as like a 20-something in 2005, then suddenly he's not old enough to have that World War II dad.
Mm-hmm.
It gets complex, Phil. But I really liked this series. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it gave us something that, that other retellings of this origin don't. Even though we've had other stories that have dealt with this origin. I was just talking to you about the official chronology of the Avengers that came out a few years back that had actual interviews with each of the Avengers, so they tell the story in the book and then they do that. But that was actually much more of just the day-to-day between missions, whereas this is more about the founding of this thing called the Avengers, which, I really enjoy. I enjoy that kind of a story. I think that gives us something that, quite frankly, we can be lacking. What are your final thoughts on this delightful read, Philip?
Like I said, for the most part, I enjoyed it. This was the first time I read it, and I'm glad we read it. Again, I'm familiar with all the origin and the original issues, but yeah, I thought this was a nice modern take on everything.
Yeah, that worked out great. So, aside from our regular weekly review of classic Avengers discussions, we are also going to be looking at what's going on with our modern Avengers heroes. And this week, Thor 750 or 24 or something came out. Yeah, 60 years of Thor. Funeral for the Allfather. This is a nice book. It's your classic big book where they got a bunch of famous guys who've written these characters before to come back and write like little filler tales. I have to say my favorite is probably Walt Simonson's origin of Beta Ray Bill. Because I just felt, I don't think I've ever gotten this detail on Beta Ray Bill before. Maybe it has been told, or it's been told in flashback, but this, like, the real-time quality of this, I really appreciate. I like the fact that the, techno priests are plotting against, Beta Ray Bill, but Beta Ray Bill actually is just more powerful than the Alpha. And actually, maybe this is stupid of me, but I just realized, he's the Beta model. Is that why he's called Beta Ray Bill?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Is that like the way to explain why he's called the Beta? But because he's a Beta hybrid, so I don't know. I don't know if that was canon or is canon or should be canon, but I really enjoyed this. I like the history they give. I think it gives us a good amount of history on Beta Ray Bill in this, which is enjoyable. It makes me feel like, oh wow, that is so much more depth for Beta Ray Bill and his planet escaping destruction. This is like, what if everyone listened to Kal-El and they actually just built arcs for all of the Kryptonians?
Yeah, it's by Walt Simonson who created them. Yeah, that was pretty.
Yeah,
good origin. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good story. Was there a story that jumped out for you that you really enjoyed?
I like that one. I like that they brought back some of the past teams, like the other one was from what was that? Yeah, Dan Jurgens from what was that, like the late 90s and stuff. I like that.
Is that the Mangog story?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one too. With Thor having to deal with his own temptations of power, because absolute power, Phil, corrupts absolutely. Although I still don't know what's going on with Odin in this, because it's like, yeah, I just had to show you that you were going to go crazy, so I sent Baldur there for you to kill, because I figured out you'd be better. But that's fun. And they repair the recorder, so that was nice. I liked the benediction of, especially because it has Volstagg in it, which I always love anytime we get Volstagg.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the last will and testament of Thor. Although, again, seems like they kidnapped this poor lawyer. I don't know. He was really blindfolded. And it's like, dude, lawyers, Like, even if Jen Walters would say, well, I don't really do, last will and testament someone, but that was neat. And it's that whole, gods should worship you, humans, because you're cool. Then we get a bit of some time travel shenanigans.
Oh, yeah, Loki.
With, 20-year-old Loki, then going and meeting Taya, Galactus, and this Loki from the Fear Itself arc, and sort of coming to deal with how he's not happy with everything that's on, with everything else, with himself, and is so worried that he's going to undo all the character growth that he's had. But then we see that this is the the next tie-in to the big Defenders plot, Defenders Beyond, because the Philip. Good old Frank from...
Oh, yeah, the Beyonders coming back, yeah.
Yeah. The Who Wields the Hammer, Who Wields Who story with Odin not being able to pick up Mjolnir. And basically suggesting that, the storm is what keeps the gods humble, and the storm is what makes the gods better gods. And I thought that was a very nice tale to tell as well.
Oh, yeah.
We get the actual, sending off of Odin and letting his thing afire, and we see that Thor has Loki do it, which is a nice thing. And, even though Loki clearly makes it. But we get to the big reveal at the end, Philip. What's the big reveal at the end?
Well, Thor's like, why is Odin, why are you, haunting me through Mjolnir? And he's like, well, I was going to go to Valhalla, but it's empty. There's no one in Valhalla.
Yeah, and someone broke down the doors of Valhalla. The real question is, did the doors break down because they wanted out or something wanted in.
Yeah.
That is next episode, Banner of War. I don't know about that. I'm going to be honest with you.
Hulk crossover, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, Hulk is going to cross over now. Okay. But I guess we can talk about it here because, hey, two founding Avengers. Because that is what we will talk about here. The founding Avengers, new Avengers, old Avengers. Every Avenger in the 50 State Initiative. You know, I don't know if they are technically Avengers or not, if they were in the 50 State Initiative. That's an interesting question. But
yeah.
Yes. The Toxic Avenger, yes, Tristan says we should do a show on the Toxic Avenger. Dark Avengers, always one of my favorites. The Thunderbolts were good. Yes. We'll see what we do, Tristan. Yes. And anyway, Philip, okay. That's fine. So yeah, anything else you want to talk about before we head off on this this first episode of Avengers Declassified?
No, I think we're good. Just next week, the classic, we're going to cover Doctor Strange 60 because, it's Doctor Strange, but it also, Scarlet Witch and, Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel are in it, so.
Oh, yes. And all of those people were somewhere or another Avengers, so that fits. And that's the great thing about the Avengers. We can pretty much make anything fit. So
exactly.
That's why they are the ultimate superhero team of the Marvel Universe, because eventually everyone gets to be Avenger. Not you, El Muerto. Sit down. Yes. You know, that's what we forgot to talk about in the last show was the big Frogman movie.
Oh, yeah.
Coming from Sony, which I'm sure with Dominic Fortune, that will be great. Actually, I don't know if Sony got the Marvel team up rights, so
yeah, those
may still be with Disney. But anyway, Philip, if people would like to write to us, call us, talk to us, give us money, how can they do all those things?
You can always email us any questions or requests. CapesandLunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. You can follow. Hey, if you are following Super Connectivity, you're already following. But Avengers Declassified's on Facebook, Twitter. Again, you can follow. Listen to us on the podcast, Capes and Lunatics, the YouTube channel. Find links to all that, the Patreon, the merch, everything is Linktree, linktr.ee/CapesandLunatics.
Aluminum mugs, people. Get yours today. All right. And of course, yes, give us money, vote in our brackets. It'll be great. Because we've got the big one coming.
And tell us who your favorite Avenger is.
Oh, yeah, who is everyone's favorite Avenger? You see, I don't know if Ben Grimm officially joined the West Coast Avengers.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
He was with them, but that's always that weird thing. Is like, did you join were you an Avenger? Like, Reed and Sue were both officially Avengers.
Yeah.
No, Johnny has never actually been an Avenger. Spider-Man has been an Avenger. He has also been on the Fantastic Four. Yes. So he's been in the Fantastic Four, he's been there, but no, Johnny Storm has never been. Ben Grimm hung out with the West Coast Avengers, but never joined. Moon Knight is an Avenger.
Mm-hmm.
He's got Avengers security clearance, man.
Moon Knight.
Oh, they're talking about when Peter Parker had to wear the paper bag over his head.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay. Anyway, so we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. The new Savage Avengers book I'm very excited about. Conan's still in the 21st century, Phil.
Yep.
So, I'm happy. Maybe they're going to let him wear pants again. One time they let him wear pants. It's like, just let the man wear comfortable clothes.
Exactly.
Trust me, I don't think the guy likes just wearing a loincloth all the time, Although I guess, maybe he just likes the freedom. Put him in a kilt. I would love to see Conan in a kilt. That would be great. But Savage Avengers is coming back, and lots of Avengers fun to be had. So we will talk about all of that here in the coming weeks. And if you would like to write me and let me know personally, just to me, what you want to talk about, you can write me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet things. Naomi still, but apparently not
For quality. Bing.
Thank you, Maz. Yes, thank you, Tristan. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Avengers Declassified. You have learned secrets that everyone was not meant to know. This podcast will self-destruct in 10 seconds.
A little more than 10, but... Oh.
Yeah, well, anyway.
No, we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back, So we need to work on our outro. So this was... What is the outro for Avengers Declassified?
Assemble back here next week.
Assemble again next week. It's Avengers. Assemble again. Yes.
Good night.
Hi, I'm one of the High Priests of Khonshu Ray, and I have the sacred privilege of providing you, the loony listener, with a podcast honouring Marvel's very own Moon Knight. So join me and a host of others at Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or support the show by becoming a Patreon member. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. It's time to get your Khonshu on.